a mysterious death.
The story of my strange inheritance occurred when they fished my cousin's body out of the Gowanus Canal.
A flood of questions.
You think it's something sinister?
I do think there's something going on.
Are the answers locked in storage?
I just shook my head and I go, oh my God, this is a nightmare.
He was, one might say, an idiot savant. Nobody has what he had. Howie Frank had the best.
He was sitting on a photo collection potentially worth $10 million.
They dubbed him the $1 million beggar. Is it worth $1 million?
Don't change that channel. It's a made-for-TV strange inheritance.
Dynamite!
I'm Jamie Colby, and today I'm in Brooklyn, New York, on my way to meet three brothers at a self-storage joint in historic Coney Island. That's where they found their strange inheritance, left to them by a homeless relative with a big surprise under lock and key.
My name's Seth Lerner. Our second cousin, Howard Frank, died mysteriously in 2012. That's when my brothers and I found out that we inherited the contents of his 5 storage units. We were shocked the first time we rolled up those doors.
Hi, guys, I'm Jamie.
I'm Ian.
Good to meet you.
Hi, I'm Seth.
Nice to meet you both. You wrote me about a wild story about a cousin and that he left all his belongings here?
His whole life is here in the storage bin.
Howard rented 5 of these 10 by 15-foot units.
When we opened up the lockers, we actually found a place where he might have been sleeping.
Wow.
We didn't really know until we found this place. He never really told us.
They did not need to be told back in the spring of 2012 that their 55-year-old cousin's life was unraveling.
He always looked very disheveled, wore the same clothes over and over again, did not bathe.
Didn't bathe.
Did not bathe. Was afraid of water.
The Lerner brothers do what they can to help. Seth is a successful art director. Todd and Ian are dentists.
I felt bad for him. And if there was something I could do, I would, whether it's doing dental work for him, giving him a little money to eat.
But they don't know that Howard, who once had a thriving business, is now begging for money on the streets, a familiar figure outside several Brooklyn synagogues.
You seem to have sadness.
It's sad. The whole thing is sad. The best way to describe Howard is he was a lost soul.
Was he mentally ill?
I would say there was a certain amount of mental illness, but not anything that was dangerous to other people.
Then Seth gets a distressing call from cousin Howard.
It was an odd conversation. He wanted to remind me that he wanted to be buried near his parents. And I said, Howard, you're a young man. Why worry about these things? And he says, well, I have to worry about them.
On June 28th, Howard Frank's body is found floating in Brooklyn's Gowanus Canal. Police suspect it's a suicide.
Do you believe that he committed suicide, Seth?
No, I don't think so.
You think it's something sinister?
I can't put my finger on it, but I do think there was some type of cover-up or conspiracy.
This much is true. It's, as they used to say on television, one of those 8 million stories in the naked city that make great tabloid copy.
I wanted to read you a section that I found curious. The city medical examiner's office says the cause of death is yet to be determined, but did not conduct an autopsy at the family's request. Is that true?
No, that's not true. We were never contacted by the medical examiner's office.
There was no autopsy?
No.
No.
Who said no autopsy then, if it wasn't you?
Somebody from the Jewish community came down there and told the medical examiner that Howard had no family, no living relatives, that there should be no autopsy.
Howard's death draws media attention, not only for its mysterious circumstances, but also because of what his cousins find hidden away inside his 5 storage units in Coney Island.
Howard Frank used to beg for money, even though he was sitting on a photo collection potentially worth $10 million.
He saved everything. What the hell is that?
Is Howard really a millionaire beggar? I take the deep dive into this strange inheritance next.
But first, our quiz question. The first self-storage facility in the U.S. was built in what city? Yonkers, New York, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or Jackpot, Nevada? The answer after the break. So the first self-storage facility in the U.S. was built in what city? The answer is B, Fort Lauderdale. While self-storage facilities date back to ancient China, the first U.S.-based operation, Lauderdale Storage, opened in 1958.
Todd, Ian, and Seth Lerner inherit the contents of 5 storage lockers in Coney Island, New York, from their second cousin, Howard Frank, who dies mysteriously in June 2012. What they find inside has some in the press speculating that Howard had locked away a fortune worth anywhere from $1 million to $10 million.
It's a mystery that's still unfolding, a collection vast enough that Howard Frank needed storage space.
You wrote me to come take a look at it.
I did, yes.
Well, I'm ready to take a look.
Great.
Really?
Open sesame. Is this Howard Frank's version of Aladdin's cave? Piled to the ceiling, photographs of classic TV stars, boxes and file cabinets full of them, going back to the 1950s. Captain's log. There are hundreds of Star Trek photos, and from the Flying Nun, more than 10,000. And a horse, of course. It's Mr. Ed. Lucy?
Yeah, he had a fondness for Lucy.
Who doesn't? Look at these pictures. Oh, my goodness. This is iconic stuff.
Yeah.
Batman?
Mm-hmm.
Happy Days.
Happy Days.
These are some of the greatest shows. Look how young they are. And now that you've been in the storage lockers, how many are in there?
It's probably close to 2 million. It's just an incredible amount of media.
So how and why did their cousin get it all? That's a real Brooklyn tale. It begins in 1956 when Howard Frank is born in Bensonhurst, the second of 2 sons.
I know there was a lot of family problems.
What kind of problems?
I think there's some type of mental instability. It was a very difficult family to be raised in.
Many of us have been there. Thank goodness for TV. Howard's a fan of hit shows of the era, like Leave It to Beaver and reruns of one of his favorites, the popular Western, The Lone Ranger. In his teens, Howard begins writing to TV studios, requesting photos of his favorite stars. His early collection includes these I Love Lucy photos, behind-the-scenes shots from Batman, and autographed pictures of his hero, Clayton Moore.
How we lived and breathed photos.
Fred Westbrook, now a Hollywood talent agent, met Howard Frank when they were both teenagers, prowling around photo shows in Manhattan in the 1970s.
He was, one might say, an idiot savant. He was a walking encyclopedia on the history of television.
The two become fast friends despite Howard's quirks.
As much as Howie loved photos, he hated water. He didn't go swimming, deathly afraid of water. So that means he didn't shower that much.
Howard is especially close to his father, Alex, a disabled accountant confined to a wheelchair who works from home.
Howie and his father were very, very close, and they supported each other.
With that support, Howard takes his photo hobby to the next level. He drops out of middle school and begins selling his prints at flea markets. Then in 1974, Howard's dad injects the capital to expand his son's enterprise. He uses $12,000 from an inheritance to buy out a well-known celebrity photo shop in Manhattan.
Why do you think his dad put him into this business?
From Alex's point of view, he probably knew somewhere down the line that he wasn't going to be around forever, and he wanted to give him a chance.
I also think it was something that Alex and he could do together.
In the buyout, Howard snaps up photos from game shows, including Family Feud and The Dating Game. Also sitcoms like The Munsters and Laverne and Shirley.
There was about 200,000 photos and books in that collection, and suddenly Howard was in business.
At just 18, Howard officially launches his own company called Personality Photos and sets up shop inside the family home.
The pictures were everywhere, on the bed, under the bed, turn the oven off, put them in the oven, but boy, what a treasure trove.
After Howard's mother dies in 1978, father and son become inseparable.
Who was taking care of who?
I think it was mutual. Howard was basically Alex's legs, and Alex was the business guy.
In the days before the internet, newspapers, magazines, and TV stations rely on independent dealers like Howard to provide them with photos. And Howard builds an impressive client list.
Howie would physically walk to the major publications and meet the editors and say, hey, I have all these archives, because nobody had what he had.
Picture an editor on Deadline who needs a shot of Fred Gwynn or one of Adam West without his Batman cowl. Fastest way to get it, call Howard, who locates the physical photo in a cabinet, box, that oven, or even in this messy stack next to the sink. Then mails the print with an invoice of $75 an image.
We found loads of TV guides that he sold photos to, and we found evidence that he supplied photos for the Franklin Mint for their plates and things like that, for John Wayne, Lucille Ball, Elvis Presley.
Did he own them?
No, he didn't own them, but studios sent out press photos for years and years, and they were handed out for promotion, so he had just as much right to them as anyone else.
By the early 1990s, Howard and his dad are raking in more than $200,000 a year. Things are looking good. Howard next surprises both friends and family with some big news.
I get a call from Howie, and he says he's going to get married. I was the best man. I was happy for him and shocked.
But the honeymoon is short-lived. Howard gets divorced less than a year later. Then in 2001, another loss. Howard's father passes away.
He was the rock that I think kept Howard together in terms of having a connection to somebody, and I think it was kind of devastating for him.
He started to spiral. He started to lose focus.
At the same time, Howard's business becomes one of the many wiped out by the internet. When you need that picture of Gary Coleman or David Hasselhoff fast, why call Howie from Brooklyn when you can instantly download your choice of shots from an online catalog? For the next several years, Howard lives off his savings, but eventually lands on the street, moving his trove of pictures to those 5 storage units in Coney Island.
He loved the pictures so much, he would go without eating. It was his life. It made him who he was.
Then in the spring of 2012, Howard tells his cousins he fears for his life. He even makes a fatalistic request in connection with his favorite show, The Lone Ranger.
Somehow he identified with the character. He told me at the time we make his tombstone, he wanted the word Lone Ranger somehow brought onto that.
Howard's cousins just don't know what to make of his ramblings about an overdue loan. Money he says he borrowed from a business associate to cover the rent on his storage lockers.
Was he paranoid, or did he have a legitimate reason to be concerned?
I think he had a legitimate reason to be concerned. He may have pushed the wrong people.
Whether murder, suicide, or accident, on June 28, 2012, the body of Howard Frank is found floating in the Gowanus Canal.
Howard Frank was last seen alive the night of June 27th, begging for assistance at one of his usual spots.
No one in Howard's family, including his estranged older brother, is contacted to approve an autopsy. The DA opens an investigation, but with a lack of evidence, soon closes the case. And for years, that's where everything sits, until the heirs call in Strange Inheritance. We can tell their story, but can we help? Well, turns out I know a guy.
What are some of the valuable things that you did stumble across?
Here's another quiz question for you. Which actress was originally offered Elizabeth Montgomery's role of Samantha Stevens in the TV show Bewitched? Tammy Grimes, Betty White, or Marilyn Monroe? The answer when we return. So, which actress was originally offered Elizabeth Montgomery's role of Samantha Stevens in Bewitched? It's Tammy Grimes. The two-time Tony Award winner didn't like the premise of the show and wanted to know why Samantha wouldn't use her magical powers to stop wars or untangle LA traffic jams.
After their second cousin, Howard Frank, dies a mysterious death in 2012, brothers Todd, Ian, and Seth Lerner are the sole heirs to Howard's nearly 2 million entertainment photos. Media reports speculate the inventory of Howard's defunct business could still be worth a fortune. Could that be true? Auction house executive Bobby Livingston volunteers to help sort things out. So this is just one of the lockers you looked at.
That's right.
So did Howard know what he was doing?
I think Howard knew what he was doing for his time. He's got every television show. He was obsessed with getting one of everything.
So rummaging through the unit is like a flashback to our childhoods. Good times.
These were publicity photos. You would have to get someone like Howard to find you a picture of Good Times. If People magazine, for instance, was doing an article on Good Times, they would call Howard.
And then he would give it to them for a fee.
That's right. But those days are long gone. And so, unfortunately, the value of these prints have gone down considerably.
Well, one thing that is never going to be gone, dynamite. I love this guy. Oh, my God, JJ. Bobby tells me you could sell these prints on eBay for a few dollars a piece, and the signed ones more like $10.
Fantastic, right? Neat.
But Bobby does find, among the dime a dozen Don Johnsons, Alfs, and Mr. T's, some real gems. What do you have?
Well, one of the coolest things I found, which is an original Elizabeth Montgomery Bewitched photo.
I love Elizabeth Montgomery.
Well, these are original Bewitched test shots, and you can see she went through herself and put kill on them. She didn't like it, and she put a question mark on that one, which was kind of neat.
I look like I should be sitting in the dentist chair. Kill. Well, for Elizabeth Montgomery, someone that's a big fan of hers, this has value?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably these are worth $100, $200 each.
What if there are more like these, filed away in these cabinets? Here's my bottom line question about all this. Is it worth $1 million? That's next. What's your strange inheritance story? We'd love to tell it. Send me an email or go to our website, strangeinheritance.com.
Now, back to Strange Inheritance.
After inheriting their cousin's trove of nearly 2 million entertainment photos, the Lerner brothers are trying to figure out what to do with it. Do you have a plan?
We pretty much don't know what we're going to do with it. It's too big for us to do anything with.
To help them weigh their options, I've invited auction house executive Bobby Livingston to meet us here at the storage lockers, where he's taken a deep dive into the photo hoard. What kind of condition is it in?
It's in all kinds of condition. Your cousin just didn't really care too much about condition. He cared about quantity.
So based on your analysis, do you have good news or not so good news?
Well, it's a very difficult thing to be able to give you a value because I didn't get to go through everything. But I think you could probably look at maybe a couple $100,000.
So call him the $250,000 beggar. Maybe. Because, as Bobby Livingston explains, his estimate can only be realized by scanning, listing, and selling the photos individually.
Well, you have to inventory it because there are some really great things in there. I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't so cool. But if you really want to understand its value, that's something you're going to have to do.
But think about that. If you spent just 2 minutes on each image, it would take nearly 8 years working around the clock to get through Howard's 2 million pictures. So do you have the time to do these individually?
No, we don't.
Because you guys have day jobs.
Yes, real jobs.
And it's costing you a pretty penny to keep them stored up.
We probably spent in storage fees about $6,000 a year.
So what do you think you'll do?
I think if a person came along and said, we'll give you a couple $100,000 for it, I would say, here, take the whole thing. Bye, see ya.
Would it be a relief?
It would be a big relief.
What would really ease their minds would be to finally answer the questions they continue to have about Howard's death. Did it somehow stem from a dispute over those 2 million pictures? They still think so, but have found no proof. And listening to cousin Todd talk about his strange inheritance, I can't help but think this is just not the way a made-for-TV story is supposed to end.
You know, I think when people leave you something, you hope that there's some legacy to it. But in this case, when you have to go through somebody's life and clean it up, it's like somebody leaving you something that you really don't want.
So unlike the TV shows Howard Frank cherished, where all plot points get resolved before the credits roll, he mostly left his cousins nagging questions, still locked up among 2 million pictures. The Lerner brothers recall their cousin's request that when he died, he wanted the name of his favorite TV show, The Lone Ranger, inscribed on his gravestone. The brothers plan to honor his wish with a stone that quotes from the show. Ride on, Lone Ranger. Ride on forever. I'm Jamie Colby. Thanks for watching Strange Inheritance. And remember, you can't take it with you.